Welcome to the series entitled Soft Skills to Enhance Your Small Business, with this presentation focusing on improving communication. The Veterans Business Outreach Center for Florida is one of 23 VBOCs in the country that works with transitioning military members and veterans who want to start or grow a business. And we also assist members of the Guard and Reserves, as well as their family members, all at no cost, as we're funded in part through a cooperative agreement with the U.S. Small Business Administration. All opinions, conclusions, and/or recommendations expressed herein are those of the authors and do not necessarily reflect the views of the SBA. My name is Janice Bengio, and I'm one of the business consultants that, among other things, works with clients who want to start a new business or grow their existing business. I'm a native Floridian, having lived in Southeast Florida and again now in Northwest Florida. I'm a veteran of the U.S. Army Reserve, and I've owned and managed several small businesses. My work experience is varied. It includes legal, judicial, medical, and general business. I have an MBA degree with a concentration in healthcare management from Western Governors University, and I enjoy sharing my experiences to help others with their business ventures. The VBOC serve clients throughout the country, so whether you're in Florida or another state, there will be another VBOC that serves your geographical area. To become a client, simply visit our website, vboc.org, and register at the top. And once you're in the system, you'll be assigned to a consultant who will reach out and discuss your business idea and then see how we can help you. And you can also reach us by calling our toll-free number, 800-542-7232. The term soft skills is often overused, and people tend to think of them as the skills you might use other than technical skills. And this is a quote that says, "Soft skills are the skills that enable you to fit in a workplace. They include your personality, attitude, flexibility, motivation, and manners. Soft skills are so important that they are often the reason employers decide whether to keep or promote an employee." As a small business owner, you can see simply from this quote what an important role these skills will play in the way you manage your business. If you take the second part of that quote and replace some words to say something like, "Soft skills are so important that they are often the reason customers or clients decide whether to continue or stop working with a business," then you can see how critical soft skills are for any business. It doesn't matter whether you're selling goods, services, or concepts. We are all drawn to people and businesses that know how to treat us well. I'm sure you've encountered people at business that seem as though they have no time to serve your needs, and they may be rushed or thinking of other priorities. They may have issues or a bad day. Then you can also think of businesses where the person serving you gave their full time and attention, and they showed gratitude that you chose to do business with them. These are examples of soft skills in play that could be subtle or obvious. Either way, the impression that the customer leaves with can influence whether or not they want to return to the business. You can have the best product on the market or the best service offered, but most people will choose to do business where they feel they're valued as a customer. You'll notice that I use the word feel. Soft skills translate into feelings, so you should understand that we interact with others not simply on logic and skills, but on this level of understanding where we absorb lots of information quickly, often subtle messages that are not verbally spoken. If you want to prove this, you can try greeting your spouse, partner, or child with silence for the first minute you see them at the end of the day. Give them a blank stare, not even a snarl or a smile. Simply being silent with no emotion will still convey feelings. And that's generally disconcerting because we expect to receive some sort of visual or auditory clues about any situation. So whether they're positive, absent, or neutral, you can influence others with your reactions. In this presentation, we'll focus on the soft skill of communication, which I feel is probably the most important one in most situations. Communication, no matter what the format is transferring information from a person, place, or group to another person, place, or group. And the key to note here is that communication is meant to be between or among people and groups, not just one side sharing information. And that sounds very simple as a process, but in fact, it can be from very simple to very complex. This is a funny meme to demonstrate that two people can have extremes with communication. One person can tell a story in a simple, straightforward method, whereas another person shares many details of the same story. That will take longer because it contains much more information. It might be helpful or it might waste time. It depends on what the communication is and who it's given to. When communicating information, consider your audience. How much do they want to know? How much do they need to know? And when is that tipping point that you lose their interest if you communicate too much? As we said, communication is sharing information. So the start of communication begins with a sender. That might be an individual person, such as when you send an email to a friend. It could be a place, such as reading a menu at a restaurant. Or it could be a group, such as a business meeting with the whole group sharing information among themselves. Communication starts with someone or something sharing information. And the points to consider here are: one, is the correct person to share the information sharing it? In a business situation, is the information best delivered by the CEO of the company or maybe by a line level employee? Two, does the sender have all the relevant information to share? And if not, the communication might need to be held until more information is available. Three, will the communicator have the correct tone or mood to share the information? And four, is it the correct time for the sender to share the information? The second part of communication is sharing the information. And this provides information based on the need to share and what impact it will have on the receiver. There are a few things you can consider when sharing information. Factual information deals with what you believe to be true. Probably most business communications are sent as factual, as you have reason to believe that it's correct, and the receiver assumes the same, unless you specifically state otherwise or let the receiver know the information is only presumed to be correct. Certain words can help convey that you don't have 100% confidence, and they can include reasonably assume, believe, perceive, it appears to be, someone else stated, it looks as though, and there are some others. Such phrases can protect you and the receiver when you aren't sure about information. Analytical information is the interpretation of factual information, and this can be used when you have a lot of data or complex data, and it would be easier for you as the sender to analyze the information for the receiver. When you're sharing financial reports, it can be helpful to include narratives to explain the numbers. In some situations, it would help to provide visual cues such as charts, graphs, infographics, because they can quickly tell some sort of story in that sort of situation. Subjective information is stated from one point of view, such as a witness to a crime. They get on the witness stand and they testify only to what they know or what they saw. And they're not there to analyze information or tell what other people might have seen. In a business setting, you might rely on people who are experts in their certain fields to provide subjective opinions on a topic. If you have questions about a tax return, you'd want a qualified tax expert to assist based on their subjective knowledge. Subjective information may include a lot of emotional feelings, which could be helpful or harmful to the message, depending on the purpose and the audience. Objective information is based on a balance of collected information, and it seeks to be impartial, not biased or prejudiced by those that could influence it. If you're starting a business and you want to know who your customers will be, you'd collect objective information by going to different sources to get a good overall idea of who might want to buy your products or services. And if you only had a couple of sources, your information may not be objective enough. As you can see, understanding who your audience is and the purpose of your communication will help you decide which one of these situations or types of information could be best for this situation. The third part of communication is that someone, a group of people, or a place will receive the communication. And once received, it's interpreted. Of course, there's an entire study about what happens from the point of starting and sending a communication to the point of receiving it. Whether it's electronic, in person, or any form of transmission, interference can occur during the transmission that could change the intent or perception. When I was a child, I used to play a game called Gossip, and we'd get several people together and start with one person whispering a message to someone else, then that person whispered it to someone else, and that kept going on until everyone had heard the message from the last person who said it. And that last person would say out loud what they thought they'd heard. And obviously it was quite different at the end than how it had started at the beginning. And that could be because part of the message was misunderstood at some point, and from that point on, it was wrong, or it could be compounded with miscommunication as the game continued. Just remember that the same thing can happen when you have multiple people passing along information. If it's important that information be accurate, it should be put in writing and maybe verbally communicated too. Some studies have shown that average listeners only retain about 25% of information they hear. So consider that when you're sharing information verbally. If you live with somebody, you already know that to be true probably, because sometimes it seems that they only hear maybe 10%, not 25%. And that's just to stress that having clear and accurate communication, especially for information that's critical to your business, be communicated to where you know that person has heard it or received it correctly. Written contracts are needed in business to hold parties accountable for their responsibilities. Repeating important information can help reinforce knowledge. Making sure we communicate with the appropriate persons or groups is also important, as well as not over or under communicating. When I talk about appropriate communications, I can recall some directions I gave to each of my sons when they were teenagers, and they either didn't understand or I didn't clearly state my expectations. When I was at work, I told one of my sons on the phone to put clothes in the dryer, and he did move them from the washer to the dryer, but he never turned it on. And he blamed me for not explaining that I also wanted the dryer turned on, an important step that I didn't say. My other son was supposed to mow the front yard. When I got home, I was shocked when I found out that he had only mowed alternative rows, so the yard looked like it had a bad haircut. And he also blamed me for not telling him that I meant I wanted all of the grass mowed, because he assumed that mowing only half of it was good enough. Surprisingly, both sons are still alive. And these are silly examples, but it's the same sort of process that issues can occur if the sender and the receiver are not on the same page with a message. There are many ways to communicate information. So here are a few examples. And the first three are called push communications or one-way communications. And they're sent by someone to reach multiple recipients. However, the recipients can't directly respond to the sender. TV allows the recipient to both see and hear a message, and that can be very powerful. But the person who receives it can also mute that message, change to another station, or turn it off altogether. And these are examples of message interruption. Businesses pay good money for TV commercials, particularly on what's considered prime time. Of course, depending on what's being sold, the business needs to decide which channel will reach the intended audience and what will be the most effective times of the day or night to reach them. Radio and other audio channels, such as podcasts and streaming music or other media services, are also excellent ways to reach a targeted audience. Messages and ads are generally customized to that geographic or demographic group, so the advertising budget may better reach the targeted audience this way through this method. Books, ebooks, blogging, and the internet in general are best suited for sharing information that a certain cohort may want to read or hear. And they may or may not contain advertisements, but the subject matter is probably of a limited scope. These methods are great for education and entertainment purposes. The next three channels are called push-pull communications, as information is shared between and among senders and receivers. Email has been around for a few decades, but it's not as popular as it had been. That's probably due to it being overused. Most people have several email addresses, and they probably check them by prioritizing them. That means that it's likely that the receiver will only read a fraction of email messages that are sent. Text messages reach people quickly, and they're good for sending very brief messages that may or may not warrant a response. It's not usually a great way to communicate important information, but businesses use texting for appointment reminders, quick notifications, and maybe even emergency alerts. Phone calls have their place in business communications, and they allow people from any location to connect with others, and they're good for exchanging information, having discussions, and connecting with the ability to understand through voice inflection and tone. However, it's a verbal communication, so there's that chance that important information could be forgotten or just not retained. The last three channels allow for information sharing on other levels. In-person communications not only allow for ideas to be exchanged, but they also include the benefit of sharing nonverbal information. And this can be body language, tone, environment, etc. This channel should also include note-taking for maintaining important topics that might need to be revisited. Hearsay goes back to that whispering game. Information that's shared via any channel is subject to dilution and changed meanings when shared over time and by multiple people. Hearsay that is relevant to business should be verified by the original source whenever possible and not shared again until verified. Assumed information can be obtained by input from many sources. We can assume something to be true based on what we believe, but like hearsay, it's sometimes important to validate our assumptions at the source, particularly in a business setting. And there are many other ways you can communicate, but the point is to understand your audience so that you communicate in the manner that gets the desired results. We're often asked questions in emails, calls, and text, and other forms of communication, but it's unacceptable to ignore them, and some people just haven't mastered the art of how to respond. You may have a quick answer, but you may not want to give the answer at that time, or perhaps you don't have a good answer yet. But an answer of some sort is required as a matter of good business etiquette and also to preserve your credibility. Failing to answer at all is usually the worst course of action. If you can't give a yes or no response to a request, try to give an answer that provides follow-up. If you say not now, it depends, maybe, you've conveyed vagueness and possibly caused frustration on the part of the person who asked it. You may not know or you can't respond with definite information, but you could say something like, I'll let you know by, and give an approximate date. And that will require that you keep track of that date and you give a response then. And just like you say you will, because we lose trust if we give vague answers or avoid answers, give wrong information, or we don't follow up as promised. This is very important to remember because we work with employees, supervisors, vendors, and anyone else that we might come in contact with. And whether it's business or personal, we really should provide some sort of answer rather than ignoring questions. Let's take a moment to look at these words and phrases. And some of these are very common in today's world. I'm sure you'll find some that you use often, and some of these are perfectly acceptable in social media or in casual conversations with friends, but they may not be effective in business communications. Some of the words and phrases should be used sparingly, if at all, and some are not useful to conversations or they may add no value to the communication. They could be seen as a fad, perhaps they're redundant, they could be construed as offensive, they could be overused, and some are grammatically wrong. Consider your audience, and are they going to understand what's meant, or will they be bored or annoyed by what you say, or will they respond the way you want them to? If you use some of these words or phrases on a regular basis, explore what might work better. We may get in the habit of using certain words or phrases that could be offensive or turn off people. And here are a few to consider as you communicate with business associates, colleagues, employees, vendors, and others. With all due respect. I heard that on HBO's Sopranos show. And because of that show, I began to think of mobsters and getting whacked when I heard the phrase. So right or wrong, I now find that phrase to be negative, and I expect bad news or condemnation to follow the phrase. Other people might hear it in a different way and feel that they're being respected when they hear it. So unless you know your audience very well, you might not want to use a phrase like this. Bless your heart is a very commonly used phrase in the South, and most people realize the translation is that you're politely calling someone an idiot in a passive-aggressive type manner. Others may think it's just a sweet phrase for someone you admire, so it's probably best to avoid using it at all in a business setting. And these are not phrases, but generally speaking, flirting, sex talking, yelling have no place in a work setting. Not only can they be offensive and not lead to the results you want, but they could also set you up for legal problems, and no business wants to be on that side of the legal system. By nature, we're tempted to approach tough conversations with logic, which can often be better than using strong emotions to get a point across. Although such methods can be effective in some situations, it's good to remember that facts rarely win arguments, and people will be defensive when they're first provided with evidence in a tough or a critical manner. The key point to remember here is having tough conversations, you need empathy, which can help soften a conversation. Putting yourself in the shoes of another will help balance logic and emotions so that each party can express their ideas and hopefully come to a good resolution. The words obviously and evidently might subconsciously infer that we can't understand why someone else would think anything differently than we do. And no one wants to feel that they're being condescended upon, and the words won't really help you if you're trying to persuade someone. Always and never are absolutes, and we know that few things in life are that solid. I think almost everyone would agree that the sun rises in the east and sets in the west, but beyond that, overusing these two words could show that you're exaggerating your statements. Using should and have to may sound like a parent or figure of authority telling someone what they should be doing, and it could imply that that person wouldn't have come to a good conclusion without your expertise. And no one wants to feel judged. Alternative phrases could include, you might consider, one possibility is, or have you thought of? All of these infer suggestions without that heavy-handed approach. As a business owner, you strive to get results, which can be a measure of success. And we don't get results alone. Whether you have employees, vendors, contractors, or suppliers, you need to communicate effectively with those individuals to get results. Consider that the people you communicate with may represent a company, but they are individual people, and your interactions with them can help get the results you desire. Here are some phrases that can show that you're a leader and that you care about others. Can you help me? Those are words used to frame that you can't solve the problem on your own, but you have confidence that the other person can assist. That shows respect and trust in the other person and a measure of vulnerability in yourself. These implied ideas bring together a spirit of cooperation. I screwed that up. That's showing that you're not perfect and you make mistakes. Not only does it show vulnerability, but it loops in the other person or persons to help solve the problem. It also implies that you're willing to learn from your mistakes by including other people in the problem-solving process. That was great how you, and then whatever it was they did. That's a phrase to offer praise, and it shows that you took notice of something that was done well and that the other person is not taken for granted. Depending on the person and the circumstances, this can be done privately, publicly, or maybe both. With most people, it reinforces continued cooperation and the desire to keep doing a good job. The coronavirus pandemic certainly changed many of the standards we'd had in place for businesses, and society had to quickly shift. And we're still learning as we go, but there are several considerations for how you may conduct business in the wake of the pandemic. Video calls and meetings have become very popular, and they've been a great way for us to keep physically separated. We've learned about several applications for meetings, and we've also learned some do's and don'ts along the way. Consider your appearance and what is appropriate for the particular meeting. Your voice can indicate emotions even if you're not on camera, so be mindful of that when you're speaking. Also, make sure that you keep yourself muted if you're not speaking. Your mannerisms and activities during a video meeting can be distracting or helpful, so think of all the attendees as being in the same room with you and behave accordingly. Some applications will allow you to add a background, blur the background, or even touch up your appearance. And these can be helpful, but you should practice these before you start the meeting so you're ready. Pets in the meeting can be cute, or it can indicate a lack of attention to the meeting itself. Be mindful of the amount of time you spend on calls, knowing that people have begun to suffer from video meeting fatigue. Don't schedule meetings more often than is necessary, or you could lose momentum with whatever you want to communicate. And depending on the type of meeting, build in some time so that other people can interact and avoid it being a one-way communication. For in-person meetings and business settings, there are several items you can address. Communicating these clearly with signage can be helpful so that everyone in the area will understand what the expectations are. Let people know if masks are required or suggested. Unless the pandemic disappears, continue to honor social distancing. In some settings, you'll want to avoid shaking hands, hugging, and touching others. Keep hand sanitizer readily available for your guests. Make sure that the restrooms are fully stocked with soap, hand sanitizer, and paper towels near the door if possible, so that they can not touch the door handles. When you have an outdoor gathering, be sure to set up the room or the outdoor area so that the guests are comfortable with the arrangement. If you have outdoor meetings or events, consider what accommodations might be needed to keep the guests safe and comfortable. Following these and other considerations will communicate professionalism to your guests or meeting attendees and show that you care about their health, safety, and comfort in light of the pandemic. Our definition of a nonverbal communication is the transmission of messages or signals through a nonverbal platform, such as eye contact, facial expressions, gestures, posture, and body language. Here are a few examples of those. Facial expressions might include a frown or a smile, a fake smile, eye rolls, or looking away from someone. Gestures can include putting your hand up as if you're saying stop, or nodding yes or no. Volume up and down of your voice can indicate different emotions. The tone of your voice is another way to express emotions. Body movements, such as finger tapping on the table or crossing your arms or legs, can indicate different states of mind. Getting too close can be uncomfortable, just as well as standing too far away. A steady eye gaze can indicate concentration, or it could mean anger. A gentle, caring touch is much different than a flirtatious touch. Our general appearance can say a lot about us, and we've all heard about how much impact a first impression will make. Artifacts or objects that we might hold, touch, or include in a conversation with someone. Our environment and where we choose to communicate can be an indication of our moods or responses that we have. And chronemics has to do with time, such as being too early or too late to a meeting or talking too long in a meeting. One study by a body language researcher named Albert Moravian said face-to-face communications are composed of 55% nonverbal, 38% vocal, and 7% words only. And that's called the 55-38-7 formula. And this would indicate that we absorb a lot of information in a quick time when we're interacting with others. Even if we're not face-to-face, some of these nonverbal indicators could come through our voice in the phone conversations or whatever method we're communicating with. It could even come across in written communications. All of these forms of nonverbal communication indicate inner thoughts or feelings, and we're largely unaware of them in general conversations. However, as a business owner or at a job, they can be very important in providing a positive or negative experience for those with whom we're interacting. So pay attention to them so that you convey what you want, but not what you don't want. This is an example of how nonverbal communication gives a customer a negative experience. As you watch it, think about your own experiences and also what could have been done better in this situation.
Can I help you?
Yes, I actually have a reservation for this weekend. And
Hold on. What's last name?
Valentine.
Like the day?
Yes, just like the holiday.
Under Tawaka?
Yes. Daniel.
All right. We got you in a room with 2 double beds for 2 nights. Is that right?
Actually, the kids stayed at home and it's just gonna be me and hubby, so we were hoping to get rid of the kids.
No, we don't change rooms at the Seaver Inn.
Okay, the double's fine. We'll just push them together, I guess. Can I ask what floor it's on?
The first.
Is there any possible way we can get something with a better view? We're just trying to do something romantic.
All right. We can do the 4th floor. Is that
Not
fine?
quite what I was hoping, but okay, I guess that works just fine. Sure. Thanks, Daniel.
All right. How many keys can we get for you?
2 would be great. 2 keys.
Is there a Mr. Valentine?
Yeah.
So like 1 key for me, 1 key for you.
1 key for me, 1 for my husband. That would be nice.
All right, fine. Here's 2 keys.
Okay.
That's the room.
Perfect.
Anything else?
We're kind of hungry. We've been driving all day long, and I'd love to something to eat. Do you know of any places we can go?
Yeah, this is a list of restaurants we have. There's a food court right over here.
Great. What kind of food stuff?
So 4-star. They got the Romp Tavern, the Choi Chow Mein Chinese food. It's pretty good.
Perfect. So we're gonna try to do some stuff in town. Do you have a pamphlet with attractions?
You want me to get you a pamphlet of attractions?
That would be great.
All right,
Yes, please.
here's a list.
Okay.
They got Old Town actually.
Okay.
It's on Iscat Avenue.
Okay, that's great.
It's down
Sure.
that way.
Nice. Perfect. Can someone help us with bags? My husband's out there. With it.
Someone will be right up. We'll get someone down there.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. It's so helpful.
Yeah, have a good day.
I'm sure that no one would like that experience. But now we're going to observe the same two people in the situation, but communicating in a more positive manner this time. And I'm sure we can all recall at least one time we had a positive or negative experience with the business, something like what we're going to see. And if we have a bad experience, we might tell others, just as we might tell others we had a good experience. So see what you think about this one.
Action. Hi, good morning.
Hi.
Welcome to the Seabird Inn, where the magic happens.
Perfect. I just wanted to check in. I have a reservation for the weekend.
Yeah, absolutely. My name's Daniel. I'll be happy to help you with that. And what's the last name?
Valentine.
Valentine. All right. So you guys celebrating special while you're here?
Yeah. We got the kids at home, and me and my hubby were celebrating our anniversary. So I'm excited.
Oh, that's really special. Let's see here. The first name is under Tuatha.
Yes.
All right. So we have you in a room for 2 double beds, 2 nights. Is that correct?
Yeah, but since we did leave the kids at home, is it possible that we can do just like a king?
Yeah, absolutely. Let me see. Let me see what I can do for you.
Okay.
We actually have the honeymoon suite available for you guys if you'd like. There'll be no extra charge at all. You guys, one of our Seavert Rewards members, so we're gonna take an extra special care of you guys while you're here.
That would be great. Thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely. It's gonna be on the 5th floor. Is that all right with you?
Yeah, that's great. I mean, I would love something a little bit.
With a view? Yeah, it's actually facing the pool.
Nice, perfect. That'd be great then.
Excellent.
I love it.
So how many keys can we get for you, Miss Valentine?
2 would be great. Just going to get separated.
All right,
So I apologize for that cutting off a little bit early, but I think you get the point that it's much different when you have someone who communicates well with you, whether it's verbally or non-verbally. We'll look at some active listening now. That's a term that talks about finding ways to build a pattern of trust with your conversation partner. As you hear between the lines, you stay engaged with the person you communicate with. And have you ever had a conversation with someone who does most of the talking and your role is boiled down to a few nods of the head or affirmation words such as, yeah, I hear you, words like that? That would not be active listening. A skilled conversationalist doesn't do all the talking, but they also use tools to show that they're truly listening and understanding what's being said. Here's how that's done. First, be attentive. If you're playing with your phone, looking at something across the room, or thinking about tonight's dinner, you're showing the other person that you're not being attentive. You can look at someone as they speak, use facial expressions, and nod affirmatively to show that you're paying attention and thinking about what's being said. Ask open-ended questions as the speaker pauses or when it's appropriate to ask questions. Open-ended questions relate to the topic at hand, and they don't have yes and no answers. Ask probing questions that require the speaker to explain more about what they've said. Request clarification to get a clearer picture of what the speaker is talking about. Paraphrasing is a great tool to rephrase a topic the speaker has just said. It not only clarifies what you believe you heard, but it gives the speaker an opportunity to affirm what they said or make corrections. Being attuned to reflect feelings means that you acknowledge and accept whatever feelings or emotions the speaker has. This doesn't always mean you agree with them, but you're being respectful and allowing the speaker to express how they feel about a subject. So don't interrupt, blurt out your opposition, or argue. And summarizing the conversation at the end allows the speaker the benefit of knowing that the conversation was heard by you. And like paraphrasing, it gives them that opportunity to make any corrections or add more information. Active listening can be practiced with a family member or a friend. And it may not seem natural at first, but the more you practice it, the better your skills will be. And we can package up the idea of active listening as a way of being respectful to others during a conversation or a presentation. And it also helps avoid misunderstandings. Imagine how useful this tool can be when meeting with a client or a prospective client, or when selling your products or services. Having clarity of thought for all parties in the conversation can help build great customer relationships and lay the groundwork for appropriate expectations for everyone involved. Communication includes words, the way we say them, the absence of words, the timing of words, and the sharing of all sorts of information, including feelings and emotions. In this example, my cat expressed that he was only participating in this photo op because he was being forced to do so. And you can almost hear his little claws clicking on the table. I, on the other hand, was thrilled to get a picture with him. So my happiness was just as evident as his desire to get over with this photo op as quickly as possible. This clearly shows that communication can happen quickly. So make the most of what you want to share. When possible, plan your communications in advance to understand why it's being said, who it's meant for, what should be said, where it should happen, when it should be communicated, and how it will be communicated. We often take communication for granted, but I hope you now have a good understanding of why good communication skills can be so important in your business. Here are some reasons to improve your skills. If you communicate well, even with not so good news, you can often keep customers coming back. A good reputation can also help you gain new customers. Building good relationships is not only for your customers, but also for vendors and other stakeholders you encounter in your business. And of course, improving personal relationships with good communications can improve your overall outlook in life. You want to make sure that your information that you provide is as truthful as possible to avoid any misunderstandings, which could end up costing you in different ways. If you understand your customers, what they need, and know the right message and the timing to communicate, your information will have a good chance of being seen or heard and not just ignored. Your overall business acumen improves as you improve your communication skills, and this can help build credibility in the delivery of your information. Pay attention to your emotions and whether they are needed in a communication or if they're best set aside so that facts and logics will carry the conversation. One of the best reasons an entrepreneur wants to have good communications is because it leads to sales and improved profitability, and that's something that all business needs to survive. You can build upon your skills with some simple, no-cost approaches. In some cases, you'll want to plan the communication and not be too quick to send it. You may even want to have a friend or a colleague review it before you send it. Know when to be succinct. Knowing your audience will help you understand what information they want and need, which is not necessarily what you might want to say, but it might be. There are many channels to communicate. Not everybody absorbs information the same way. You might need to utilize the multiple channels and plan the best timing to be effective. You might need to repeat the communications too. When you're unsure about information or it changes rapidly, be sure to verify and validate it before sending. And this can be more necessary in some situations than in others. Understand that the majority of information we consume, particularly in face-to-face communications, is consumed through nonverbal means. The environment, our bodies, and especially our face and voice will contribute to our messages. Practicing with others in front of a mirror or just practicing can help you identify ways that you can improve nonverbal communication. And don't be shy about continuously learning to improve. There's a lot of free information out there, and you might even consider joining some sort of civic, religious, or other group where you can use communication skills often. Practice makes perfect, as they say. So look for ways to improve your verbal, nonverbal, and written communications. And I hope you've learned some ways to improve your communication skills as related to your small business and improve your overall relationships. The Florida Veterans Business Outreach Center is a team of professionals that are here to support veteran-owned small businesses with startups and growth, counseling, education, and outreach, all at no cost to you. You can learn more about our services or register to become a client by visiting our website at vboc.org or calling 800-542-7232. I appreciate your time and attention and look forward to working with you in the future. Thank you.